The property was bought in 1859 by Reverend Jacob Shaw McComb. And when Reverend McComb bought the place, he built the homestead over there. We'll walk that way in a minute, but that's where the original home site was. We found that with two different ground penetrating radar teams. And then when I've done some metal detecting over there, we found things consistent with that. Padlocks, latches, pulls, hinges, some old Indian head pennies. And we found a couple of Dr. Connor, who was the second person that found his scalpel blade and a hypodermic needle of his.
Wow.
This house, we think, was built in 1885 by Clark Martin. And if I need to start over anything, that's...
Nope, you're good. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize you were.
Yeah, it was built by Clark Martin in 1885, and the bell up there is a true graveyard bell that was given to previous owners by some of the guests. And the graveyard bells were used when we weren't good about telling if you were really dead or not, so people got buried alive periodically. So they'd have a little sleeve into the casket with threads that went to the fingers and toes and head, so you could move and wake and hopefully get rescued. And that's where the term saved by the bell, dead ringer, and graveyard shifts come from.
Interesting.
So we'll head over this way. The original house here, I mean, everything that's original in this house is concrete. It's about 15, 16-inch concrete walls. The new part, we think, was added on in the 80s, and that's our ghost-free zone. There's the first of many holes.
First of many. I found one.
That's where Judy and I will sleep, and
Okay.
if anything happens in there, we just don't acknowledge it. Judy
Sure.
doesn't share my passion for the paranormal. She likes to investigate somebody else's haunted house, not
Sure.
her own. So
Sure.
she sleeps better.
Totally understand.
So over here, you can see I peeled the grass with Roundup just because I got tired of having my flags up. But this is where the original home site was that Reverend McCombs would have lived in. And when Reverend McCombs moved out here, his wife Emily was pregnant with her fourth child, John G. After he was born, 5 weeks later, he passed away. That's our first recorded death on the property. Emily went on to have 10 children, and she died a year after the last child was born, so that's our second death. We have, or believe we have, a cemetery in the backyard. We think Emily and John G. are probably buried there, as well as possibly some of the other descendants of the McCombs or the
Wow.
Grandbreeds. After Reverend McComb moved, he sold the property to his cousin, Dr. John Connor. That's our first doctor that lived out here. He was here from 1875 to 1883. He also was the Miller County coroner, so in addition to seeing patients here, he may have prepared bodies or done autopsies here. He also had his own apothecary shop, which was pretty common back in those days. So we'll head this direction then. Some big holes kind of back in this direction.
Those would have been parts of the foundation.
Yeah, we've had some of the locals say they can remember seeing the foundation kind of laid out. So
That would have been parts of the foundation, how they blocked them up.
Interesting. Very cool.
and we think like there's probably where the fireplace was. They got some pretty good hits on that, and looking at pictures of what the original cabins looked like, it was pretty consistent. We have a wonderful neighbor across the street, Laura. Occasionally, she'll let her cats out, and they can come over here. They're extremely friendly, but if you don't want to be climbed, don't encourage them. They, they'll love on you as much as you let them.
I went to school.
I like animals, so
Good.
yeah, I like animals, so I'm
I
good.
mean, they're very sweet, nothing aggressive about them. I just know some people are allergic, and some people are a little skittish around them.
Paul right down the road just died too.
Paul just died.
Paul.
Okay, was he the one with the lawnmower?
Lawnmower?
Yeah, yeah.
Paul.
Okay.
He's family.
I'm sorry to hear that. I've heard from somebody that he was sick, but I think it's probably 6 months or a year ago last I heard.
Yeah.
The porch out here, we're not sure exactly when that was put in, but that's where most people come to smoke. There's a little metal bowl there. We've also got some of the lamps for the citronella if you are out here and the mosquitoes are bad and like those. Were y'all going to bring a barbecue or a grill?
Not this time.
No.
Okay, I'm sorry. Well, let's head down this way just a little bit further.
Didn't work out that way. So we're doing something different.
Always got to be fluid on these things. So when we had the radar done, we had been told there was a mass grave here that was primarily from patients from that died during the Spanish flu of 1918. We figured out that wasn't true because there was not a doctor here in 1918. Both of our radar teams said there's definitely something buried there. They said, I can't say if it's people, if it's animals, if it's body parts, but there's something there. We had cadaver dogs out here, did not get any hits here at all. And then last year we found out from some of the neighbors that there was a family that lived here that raised dogs. They had something really unfortunate happen, lost a bunch real quick, and they buried them in the backyard.
Wow.
So I think it's a mass dog grave now.
Wow.
Any area there's an orange flag that's bent, it's where a dowser got a hit. We've had a couple of dowsers that have been out here, and I've dug up probably a dozen of them. And every time I do, I find cast iron. I haven't found anything else, but it's neat that they're getting hits on something.
Sure.
And hopefully one day there'll be something a little more intriguing than that.
Yeah.
There's a little medallion that's from World War I. We got that at the swap shop that used to be down the road, but we put it there because at that time we thought this was tied into 1918. But it's just a little token to the soldiers from
Sure.
World War I. The little plaque another guest put out here before we moved here. The outhouse does work. It was put in by Dr. Myron Jones, the last practicing doctor that lived here. Years later, when Nick Sacco opened the place up as a bed and breakfast, Dr. Jones's son came here and brought with him a bunch of papers Dr. Jones had written out about his time here. So
Wow.
we've got that history inside, and reading through it, he said one of his first orders of business was to put in a proper privy.
Wow.
So,
Very cool.
the entire property is fenced in, so if you're walking at night, you can't get off of it unless you try. And 2.2 acres altogether. The back porch has a 10,000-gallon cistern underneath it. That was put in by Dr. Jones. The porch was put in by him. We obviously added the exterior, but and I'll point out too, Judy's been repairing our stairs. She is a mason on the side, so it comes from
Very
a
cool.
long history of stone mason. So over here is where we were told we had a pioneer cemetery. And
Wow.
once I found out that a lot of the history wasn't accurate, I just assumed nothing was. So that's why we paid somebody to come out here and do radar in 2019. Then we paid another team to come out in 2020 and to bring the dogs. And both teams found pretty much the same thing. About 60 to 70% of the stones had hits centered on them and facing the eastern sky.
Wow.
So if you see an orange flag straight up, that's one of the radar hits. You see a yellow flag, which I need to replace those, that's where the cadaver dogs got hit. There were 5 hits with the cadaver dogs over here.
Wow.
All of them were up in this area. The wooden cross we know is one of Nick and Marcy's dogs that passed away. They did rescue with dogs and cats, and one of them passed away, and they buried that one there, so I just replaced the wood whenever it rots. So having the radar, 2 different radar teams get hits, having the cadaver dogs get hits. Next thing I thought, well, I'll just start digging. I hate to tell people we have something if we don't, and if we
Sure.
were fortunate enough to find a bone, we could actually do DNA, get a proper marker for the person, notify the authorities, do what you have to do under that. I have found 10 coffin nails here, and coffin nails could have been used with other carpentry, so it still doesn't prove something. But 2 radars, a cadaver dog, and the nails makes me think more likely than not somebody was buried here. Right. And I think Emily and John G definitely make the most sense. Everybody else that's lived here, we know where they're buried at. Those are the only 2 we can't find a record. Miller County Historical Society doesn't have a record. And if you think back then, family cemeteries were pretty common, especially for a pastor. And if the house was there, this would be a perfect location. It's
Sure.
not far away, but it's also not right out back that you're seeing it every time you look. So my guess is, John G and Emily, and then possibly some of their cousins, grandparents, other relatives. Where the little stones, the little figures are, those are ones that psychics or mediums have felt particularly attracted to. We have some teams that bring those out, and we'll move things out of the way, not to bias them, but it's interesting when that one in particular, I think, is the one they probably migrate to the most or feel the most attachment with. So
Wow.
we'll head on down to the shed now, to the chicken coop. If you want to go in there, I'll be glad to unlock it. All that's really in there is a wood stove that I disassembled from the house, garden hoses, and some old tires, and probably a groundhog. That's his main thing out there. So the fence is kind of the midway part of the property. If you walk on down the hill, it opens up into a big area, and I'm glad to walk down there with you guys, or if you don't want to, I can just tell you about it, but that's where we have a little connection with the Civil War. Company D, the Missouri Home Guard, was based from around the edge of our property over to the creek that's about a half-mile past it. Reverend McComb served in a Company D from June to December of 1861. You know, he would have walked back and forth periodically with friends. I have found some old handmade buckles back there. I found an old shot that's probably late 1800s. It's not Civil War, but it's you know, close to it. So hopefully we'll find more stuff as time goes by with the
Very
radar. We got a bunch of hits on one quadrant of it, little scalloped out areas that look like campsites. And the guy that did it, he's a retired geologist that goes all over the place. And he said, you know, just without even doing the test, I know there was something there. But whether it was Native American, whether it was Civil War, or whether it was just the owners that, you know, had some.
So we are allowed to go down there and,
Yes, ma'am.
okay, cool.
Yeah, and again, if you want to, I'll be glad to walk you down now if you want to.
The stuff that you found, did you keep it?
Yeah, we've got it on display inside. Anything really good makes the display cabinet in the turret room.
Yeah.
We just moved kind of the intermediate stuff into a basket to spare room, and then the junk goes in the shed. But yeah, we'll show you all that stuff. My
Wow.
favorite find, which is in display there. See that big rock that's standing up over here? It was lying down flat, and just maybe 6 inches, 8 inches in front of it, got a nice hit with my metal detector, and there's a screwdriver about yay long. Handle was broken off. It was wrapped in burlap. Yeah. Growing up in the country, if we broke tools, we fixed them or we threw them away. I've never given one a burial, so I don't know. There's no way I can prove anything, but not long before I found that, one of the neighbors who was in his 80s said when he was growing up, Brumley was a pretty rough town, and his words were a good place to get killed on the weekend. So it's a shame, it's got to be, but
Especially if they were drinking.
yeah. And he said there was a lot of that drinking and gambling on the weekends was pretty common. Do y'all want to walk down there now or not?
Sure.
Call.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, hold on. Danny's calling me now.